there's too many people that are isolated in trying to do good work for God. They're all trying to figure out how to market Catholicism in a fresh way that actually engages people.
So we tried it the first year, had tremendous success.
It's exciting. I'm having fun. I'm meeting a lot of really great people.
I have been to all of these shows over the last year, and by far this is my favorite.
I want to emphasize the importance of what you're doing as lay apostles in the CMN.
The Catholic Marketing Network has a service that the marketplace needs and the church needs.
There's the distribution of a lot of Catholic religious items, but most of the people you talk to, they say, we really come for the networking.
It's a great joy to be here. In fact, it was almost 10 years ago that I came to the Catholic Marketing Network for the first time. There was a friend and I putting out sacred music, and Ignatius Press picked it up and they showcased us, and before you know it, we had sold 20,000 copies to people like you. And that sprungboard a company that now has reach in about 8 different countries.
I found really good and very interesting because I like when people come from everywhere and we can learn a lot. We come to show something, but they show us too. So that's an amazing.
This is always one of my favorite events.
I always love coming here and being here because it's such a synergy to be around like-minded people with the same ideals, the same love for the church. So it's beautiful.
Welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. This is a show all about implanting hope in our hearts. I'm Bill Snyder, joined by my friend Dan DeSantis. We're glad you're here for our uplifting conversation about faith and how it sustains our hearts through all the seasons of life. Thanks for walking with us.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Sowing Hope podcast. I apologize there for all that feedback here on the intro, but we hope that you are doing well this evening here on the Sowing Hope podcast as you join us from wherever you might be. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, I am joined by my friend and co-host, Ann DeSantis. Ann, how are you this evening? And is it sunny in Philadelphia today?
Yes, it certainly is. It's great to be here, Bill. Thank you.
Oh, good. No, it's wonderful. It's great to be back. Can't believe we're on episode 144. And I know we have a wonderful guest with us tonight. Why don't you tell us a little bit about her?
Oh, I'd love to. Yes, we have Cathy Gilmore, and I would like to read her beautiful bio. She is a virtue advocate and the creator of the Virtue Heroes. In a world groping in darkness, the meaning of virtue itself has been marginalized. Cathy works to shine light in hearts where authentic virtue is lost or forgotten. She's on a mission to empower children, youth, and grown-ups with fresh energy to understand and exercise true spiritual strength. Cathy's dynamic skill as a speaker, catechist, educator, and award-winning children's author integrate with her background in marketing and merchandising to create the fresh and fun approach to family virtue formation known as Virtue Heroes, a unique spectrum of creativity with a supernatural sprinkling of faith, hope, and love has created the beguiling charm and powerful value of these characters who empower character in kids. Cathy's passion is to captivate the imagination of children and youth and ignite in them a desire to grow strong in the true and lasting goodness of virtue. Mrs. Virtue Lady prays that you and your children and grandchildren will be part of Virtue Renaissance, renewing hearts, transforming culture, and blessing the world, with each of us as tiny virtuous heroes for God. I love your bio. Thank you so much for joining us on Sowing Hope.
Just unmute yourself, Cathy.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Yeah, it's amazing to have you here and finally get to meet you. Actually, we're looking at you on Zoom, but of course the finished product of this podcast is audio. And but it's nice to see your face. And how are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. Staying busy. It's crazy. I'm actually getting ready to make a move. So our house is all in boxes right now, but all is well. God is good.
Yes. Oh, wow. I commend you, because I remember we haven't moved in quite a while. I'm in Pennsylvania, and we've been here for actually 23 years at the house that we're at. But yeah, it's an undertaking, isn't it?
Well, and for me, there is this uncanny little opportunity for virtue in the midst of all of it, because there's so much transition. There's so much work, physical work to do. And it's funny because my husband and I, we can get pretty snappy with each other. And yet, once we start working on a move, we've actually moved like 7 times. We're nuts. And he's not even in the military. We're just, I guess we're ADD when it comes to housing. But anyway, but it's so interesting how for us as a married couple, the virtue seems to shine when we're working together as a team on these moving projects. So thank you, God, for the grace in that.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. So for those who are listening and have never met you before, don't know much, the Virtue Advocate, I love that title. Tell us more about how that came about in your life.
Yeah, when I started actually publishing books and found my author voice, the first book that I published was a team effort with my sister that's called Easter Bunny's Amazing Day. And the two of us came up with this wonderful book that sort of rebooted the Easter Bunny and put him in the tomb with Jesus and had him be basically Jesus's first disciple, this terrified little tiny bunny. Super sweet story. And Jesus picks him up, holds him on his shoulder and says, "Don't be afraid, little bunny, I am with you." And so then the bunny then goes on forever after to share the joy of Jesus at Easter with everybody. So when that story came to be, I found my author voice, and I found the fact that I felt like I was really being called to create stories with these little animal characters that tell their own story of a powerful either Bible or spiritual history moment. And so then when I started figuring out, and then the focus was going to all be on virtue. Each story was going to be devoted and dedicated to virtue, a certain virtue. Well, then as I got to the point where I'm like, okay, how do I frame this? I was like, well, I'm not a virtue expert because I don't have an alphabet after my name, like so many of the expert people do. And I'm like, well, what am I? And then I decided I'm an advocate, because truly virtue itself is being maligned in our culture. Now, if you type in virtue on a search bar in Google, the thing that comes up first is virtue signaling. So the fake virtue, the mocking of virtue, the minimizing of virtue, the opposite of virtue is what comes up first. And so that's where I'm like, guys, even if all I ever do in my whole life is to make virtue, the word virtue, trend on Google, I'll be happy.
Wow, that would be amazing.
Yeah.
I hope you do. I hope it happens.
I know.
Yeah, that would be awesome. No, I love that. And as a parent myself, my kids are older, but how important is it to teach them virtue? Because I'll tell you, vice is everywhere when it comes to, the attacks on kids, I think, and our culture, right? And so I think that's an incredible thing that you're doing, bringing that as an important part of how we should live and the way that we react to life and the way we react to situations that happen.
Well, and truly, I think this all really got energized in me because I had wanted to be a children's author ever since I was in college. And it basically took me, I was that frightened bunny, hiding in the cave for 25 years, trying to get the courage to actually be a published author. And when I finally was, and I looked out there, my son was a little bitty guy. I call him one of the editors on the first book because he was only maybe 5. Well, as I started writing the other stories, he was getting older and he was quite a reader, and he was getting to the point where he was almost in middle school, and I was watching what was happening to him as he was reading more of the pop culture type stuff that's available for young people. And it made me even more energized to want to advocate for everybody to find the books and the storytelling that actually energize a desire for virtue in kids. Because most of the pop culture stuff does not. It energizes a desire for vice, for everything, for humor that mocks, not humor that laughs with and alongside. All of those different kinds of things. So even just being in this, this profession, I guess, of being a writer, with my son walking through that age and experience, it energized me all the more that the power of story is how we actually get into the heart. And that's where virtue happens. Virtue is the lived faith. We've got a lot of intellectual faith, but the lived faith is virtue. So that's where that kind of really operates for me.
That I love how you describe that, because it's got to go from the heart, from the head to the heart, right? I was going to say the other way around, but no, it's got to be from the head and into the heart and into the actions. And what you said too about the humor, and I have daughters. I don't have any sons, but and I think it affects both boys and girls, all of us, right? But I mean, I know when you're talking about your son and that being exposed to that sort of that dark humor sometimes that kids, I know your perspective, like you said, through the eyes of your son, but how sad is that? But the antidote is virtue and teaching your kids virtue. Parents have a responsibility, don't they? I mean, to teach.
And the thing about it is that if you teach it intellectually, they don't get it. But if you give them experiences of virtue, whether it's through a story that then they can imagine it and they can internalize it through the story, or through lived experiences of where you're actually behaving with virtue in some way, then it sticks. And that's the hardest part, is because most of our education happens in a classroom. And it's very difficult for kids to really grasp the concepts, the vocabulary, the words of what they actually mean when you're just talking about virtue. It's so much more than just the words.
Yeah, right. And I really like how you draw that out, Cathy, because I think for so many people out there, they think that the Catholic Church too, or that living a life of virtue, you have to go around with this sad face on, right? Like you have to go around with, oh, I am this so pious or so holy that I never laugh in my life, that I never enjoy life, but through living the experience of virtue, you realize that it's actually a rather joyful experience, right? Like you realize that this is joyful and fun and engaging and living life to the full. It's not a boring life to live virtuously. And I think oftentimes that, as you mentioned, the first thing you search for when you search for virtue, now Google puts virtue signaling up there, all the negative stuff. So people are like, oh, I don't want to live virtuously. I want to live, with all this vice. So yeah, I mean, that's awesome that you are drawing that out and saying, you know what, enter into this lived experience, enter into this life that is going to uplift you and live to the full your human person.
Well, and with a really little kid, because the stories that I create are really the sweet spot is for these little pre-K kids. Mm-hmm. Bigger kids like to come back to them once they're a familiar story, but it's the little ones that enjoy them a lot. And for a little kid, who's 3, 4, 5 years old, I'm not going to be able to express it in the way that a psychologist could, but their imaginary world and their real world blends. Do you know how they can be pretending all the way through a regular experience and it's all mixed up for them? They can be still in the pretend mode while they are in the real life mode. Well, that's why I'm trying to give kids these tiny virtue heroes so that little Eli the caterpillar, who's the virtue hero of kindness, well, he can be crawling on their arm or on their shoulder in their imagination anytime. And he can be helping them to spot kindness in somebody else and things like that. And so we just give them these vivid little characters that then stick with them and sort of echo in their imagination so that it's with them when they're playing as well as, when they're actually reading the story.
Beautiful.
Oh, I love it. I'm going to read off some of your titles too. And Cathy's Tiny Virtue Hero storybooks is The Mouse and a Miracle, Wisdom Finds a Way, Jesus Lost and Found, Easter Bunny's Amazing Day, and Little Lamb Finds Christmas. Little Lamb Finds Christmas. Just wanted to read off some of those. What was the experience like for you writing those books and the illustrating? Now, do you do the illustrating as well? Or?
Not at all.
Okay.
I could not begin to illustrate to the degree. We had separate illustrators for the first 2 storybooks that came out. Easter Bunny's Amazing Day, that has one illustrator. Then Little Lamb Finds Christmas. Both of those are published through Liguori. So both of those have individual different illustrators. Then for the Tiny Virtue Heroes series, I am working with a woman named Jeannie Egolf. And she is just extraordinary. I don't know if you guys, I feel like you guys may have had her on your show at some point.
Yeah, she's a good friend. Yep.
Have you?
Yep. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. And she is just incredibly talented. And really, I gave her such a huge challenge. And she has risen to the occasion because I told her that I didn't want sappy, sweet art. That so much children's literature can fall, especially religious children's literature, can fall into a very similar look, overall look. And so we didn't want anything that already looked like it had been done religiously. And then I said, and would you please go and look at all of basically the history of Disney illustration, Disney, Pixar, all of it. And I said, because I want these to have the appeal of classic Disney and all that. And so she has done such an extraordinary job with these characters to make them have that fun and sparkle and cuteness without looking harsh. Because nowadays, a lot of the artwork for children has gotten a lot more stark and a lot more harsh. So she keeps it soft and sweet, but fun and memorable and very engaging. So.
Wow. It's all put together so well. You're doing great work. Yeah, it's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I hope that a lot of children will be blessed. And what I like to tell parents and grandparents is that, especially grandparents, because, a lot of parents, young parents these days, they're of the generation where they're not sure how important religion is in their life. They've kind of come through the gauntlet, and it's like, yeah, it's nice, whereas the grandparents know that it's a lifeline for your whole life. It's everything. And yet they look at their young people, their young adult children, and they're grieving, and they're like, what do I do? I have these children that are now having my grandchildren. They really don't want to talk about faith. They really don't want to hear about it. They don't care. They're just not into it. Or some of them are really kind of negative on it. How do they reach them? And I say, give them the children's book. Give them the storybook. Because to anybody looking at these books, they just look like a cute, basically like a little Bible storybook. The Mouse and a Miracle is telling the story of Mary at the Annunciation. Wisdom Finds a Way is just the story of the kings visiting baby Jesus at Christmas. And the story of Eli, the caterpillar, Jesus Lost and Found, is just the finding in the temple. It's Mary and Joseph looking everywhere to try and find Jesus. So they're very, regular little Bible stories that are illustrated real cute. But the fact that the virtue element is in there is done in a way that then it touches the heart of that sort of apathetic parent at the same time that it's touching the heart of the child for the first time. So I pray, and so far I've had people contact me and say I'm in tears, reading and different things like that, because some little special thing will touch them. There was a Marian scholar who read the Mouse and a Miracle book, and he was so excited. He's been studying, he has the alphabet after his name, okay? He spends his whole world studying Mary and the Blessed Mother. And he was so excited that Mary danced at the end of that book. And he's like, I always imagined Mary dancing, but no one's ever drawn a picture of her dancing. She was a Jewish girl. She would have danced.
That's right.
Yeah.
But I was determined that this was the first 20 of these books will align with the mysteries of the Rosary. And I was determined that every one of them that's in the joyful mysteries leaves the reader with a sense of joy,
right?
Real joy. So anyway, it's been fun watching people's reaction to them.
No, that's great. It's a great way to approach it too, kind of incognito, slipping the virtue into these lives, because as you mentioned, there are many people that are hostile, or they've been hurt, or just the fact that they're just not interested in their faith, and maybe these little nuggets. I mean, that's really I think for me, these little nuggets of virtue that you place out there in the lives of young children, and then it just kind of spills over into the parents, and you start teaching them lessons, and again, as you mentioned, it's practical too, the lessons they're going to be learning, they can use in their preschools, they can use in their kindergartens, they can use so that they can learn how to live virtuously from their very young age, and all done with a little bit of just kind of subtly slipping it in to the household. So I think you're exactly right, Cathy. Target it out to the grandparents, and of course, faithful parents who really want to help their kids understand virtue and then live it at a young age. Because I think when you live virtuously at a young age, it makes it easier as you get older and older and older, and into puberty and all those other things that come with growing up. So just awesome stuff. Thank you so much for all the amazing work you're doing.
Yes, and I echo the same thing. It's exciting for us to have you here on the Sowing Hope podcast. And I wanted to make sure that we touched on those 3 hats that you wear as a virtue advocate. And I'm just going to read a little paragraph that as the lead with marketing and event planning for Catholic Marketing Network, planning the conference portion of the Momentum 21 event and empowering all kinds of Catholic ministries and businesses to equip Catholics for lives of faith and virtue. Now, the Catholic Marketing Network conference is coming up this month here. We're taping this in July, early July, of course, of 2021. And the conference is, I believe, the 27th and 28th and 29th. I'm happy to report that I'll be there too with Bill Snyder and Patchwork Heart Ministry. So thank you for actually extending that out to us. So tell us about this. We're so excited to hear.
It's very exciting, and truly, you know, when I'm wearing my CMN hat, as I say, you know, you would think that it's not part of the virtue effort, but it really is, because CMN for many years has been a organization that basically put on a trade show, and we connected everybody who created Catholic publications and products with the people that might help them distribute those, sell them through a store or a ministry or something. And that was really good. And that was a niche that was important to fill when the whole effort of evangelization was sort of young. Well, now the whole method of evangelization has changed and expanded, and with online and everything, there's so many more people, so many more lay Catholics that are involved in the process of building faith. And so now we invite everybody to come to CMN's event. We invite all kinds of ministry-minded Catholics. That's what we say. If you're active in any kind of Catholic business or ministry or apostolate, you know, if you're involved in a prayer group, if you're involved in anything where you're helping and serving in your church, maybe you're on the evangelization committee, maybe you're on the marketing committee for your school, all of those kind of people can come to our event and really be have their battery charged spiritually, be professionally enriched and equipped, and even personally energized, because you're around all these like-minded Catholics and you're like, wow, I never dreamed there were so many people that cared about this stuff the way I do. And there is something about that energy that you come into the expo hall and you come into the various sessions, and it's just beautiful to witness and be part of. And I get excited because through all these people's efforts, we help virtue to grow, both as an education, you know, path, as well as a lived experience path in daily life and business and everything else.
Yeah, it all comes together, and it's exciting because you're right. I mean, it's for so many people who are involved in ministry, right? And there's all kinds of ministry, whether they're Catholic authors, speakers, people who work in some kind of church catechetics or other type of ministry within the actual churches, right?
Correct. And people used to think, oh, well, I shouldn't come if I'm not a retailer, if I'm not a ministry selling stuff, I shouldn't come to CMN. And truly in the past, you know, that might have been true. But now, because we have conference partner tracks, you know, we've got the Catholic Writers Guild that has a whole track for writers. We have the National Shrine Association for shrine directors and everybody involved with shrine ministries. We have the SEMA apostolate, which is the Coalition of Eucharistic and Marian Apostolates. So this is this collection of all these different Marian and Eucharistic apostolates. So all that track, all those people that are able to come and connect and find ways to make a difference by working together.
Yeah, exciting stuff. Now, another facet of your work is as a speaker, empowering families and schools to help children desire to live with heroic virtue, speaking at Momentum 21 as part of the Catholic Brain Conference for DREs and catechists. topic is practicing the virtue of prudence. So tell us more about this.
Well, and this is what is another layer of what is sort of making the whole identity of CMN just be transformed, is that we are having a national educator, catechist, DRE conference as a track within Momentum. And so, I mean, we've even had some groups say that they're, can we bring 26 of us? And we're like, oh my God. So it's exciting to see the fact that now that DREs and catechists are going to be able to come to a conference-based event, and they're not going to be in their own little bubble. They're not just going to be surrounded by other catechists and DREs. They're going to be surrounded by all kinds of people who desire for the faith to grow and blossom in families, not just the kids, but how do we energize the whole family? How do we energize the whole parish? And so I have the honor of being one of the speakers, and my talk is about the virtue of prudence, and the way I will be weaving it together is with these virtue hero characters, so that we will be thinking about how the power of imagination, the power of story can really energize the way we catechize children, and how we can have prudence in the classroom, as a catechist or a DRE, how do we have that exercise of prudence when we're trying to do what we do with and for children? Because it's tricky, especially if you're doing a like a CCD program that only meets once a week. It really does take some prudence to figure out, what do you do with that time when that time is so short and so precious? So we'll be getting into that as well. So part of it is what I call the delightful part, which is the characters and what makes us smile, but also the practical part of how do we navigate this?
Yeah, navigate's a good word, because you are wearing many hats. And backtracking a little bit, because I have another point of one of those hats that you wear, which is really backtracking, but as the author of the Tiny Virtue Heroes, which we've already discussed, creating the multi-book series with the characters, empowering character in kids. And of the latest book, I don't know if we got to actually mention this, that latest book is Jesus Lost and Found, honors fatherhood through the example of Saint Joseph. Now, we didn't get to talk about that, particularly that book, so let's talk more.
Well, and I have to tell you a funny story about this, about our crazy culture, and how I was saying, virtue, you try to promote virtue and you get the word virtue signaling. Well, I was getting ready for our launch of Jesus Lost and Found, which is this portrait of Joseph being virtuous in the midst of losing Jesus. Okay. And so every different portrayal of Joseph in the story is he's portraying the virtue of kindness. And we even are following sort of a breadcrumb story of, where is Jesus? And it's like we're answering a question that children would ask, goes, well, what did Jesus do for those 3 days? And so we imagine that Jesus has gone all through Jerusalem doing acts of kindness. And then Joseph and Mary keep going from person to person trying to find Jesus, and they're trying not to lose it. You know what I mean? They've lost not only their son, they've lost the Son of God. And, how do they not lose it? And Joseph, he is so good. He is so strong. And you really get to picture that, but at one point, Joseph is like, how did we lose the Son of God? At one point, Mary breaks down in tears, and it's like, will we ever find him? So there's a lot of drama in this little children's book. But the whole point of it is so that in sort of a contrast to so many of the storybooks for children, even the good ones, they mock fatherhood. They make fun of fathers. We laugh at dad's expense again and again and again and again and again. And so truly what has happened is we have undermined the authority of fathers by the way we portray fathers for the sake of humor. And it breaks my heart. So this whole book is about a strong dad. And we're not telling the kids dads should be strong. We're showing them a strong and loving father. One of my favorite moments in the whole story is the final picture of the book where Joseph has his arm around Jesus, and he says, and it's like a dad joke. He says, well, maybe we should have thought to look for you first in the Father's house. And the picture of the two of them smiling together is just so sweet. And I hope that kids will leave this, and even dads reading it to their child will finish this story and think, oh, they'll sigh. They'll have that sigh that they know they've just experienced something deeply true and good. And so this story is not for the kids just to honor the dads. This is for the dads for once to be given a thumbs up and say, yeah, that's what dads are, and we love them.
I'm so glad you said what you just said, because it is the sad thing that you think that in our culture, in some of the writings and TV shows and social media stuff or whatever, that it's making dads look like their role is not really all that important, or that they're sort of like, oh, he's just there just to look good or something, but not really doing anything. And it's just wrong. It's wrong. And so that this whole idea of what you're doing with Virtue, I just think is an incredible thing. I'm really glad that I'm learning more about it, because I can tell you one thing, I'm going to help promote what you're doing. I mean, I hope this podcast is obviously helping a lot that Bill and I are doing together. But I love what you're doing. I can't wait to meet you at CNM. I know Bill's feeling the same way. And that's going to be a great thing. So is there any other sort of call to action or thing that you want to let our audience know about either what you're doing or what other people that you're working with are doing right now?
Well, I would say definitely that Bill needs to start reading the St. Joseph story to his baby.
Yes, I do.
Already.
Yes. You can count on me getting the books. You can count on me buying your books, without a doubt. I'm already reading so many stories to my son Elvin, and I'm looking for those stories of great masculinity, like Saint Joseph has, and the way you present it, and so I think that. First of all, I love reading stories. Even though Elvin is 2 months old, I enjoy reading them, and he enjoys listening to them. And so certainly, it is never too young to begin instilling that virtue. It's never too young to begin doing that. And so, folks, out there listening, it's not just me. It's all of you young dads out there listening to this. Get a copy of these books. Get a copy of the Virtue Heroes, because as you read, you're instilling those life lessons, those beautiful virtues in your child. And they pay attention and they listen. Even when they're 2 months old. I was reading books to my son in utero. I would sit next to my wife's belly and I would read the stories into her belly, and it was funny, but it's a beautiful experience. You can do that. So yeah, Cathy, thank you for the motivation to do it. And certainly, we got to teach virtue. We have to, instill these. There are so many other different types of messages being sent, and just going back to what you were talking about, just about dads too. I remember growing up watching the TV show Everybody Loves Raymond. It was one of my favorite television shows when I was in high school and college. In fact, I even missed a final in college because I was watching the series finale of Everybody Loves Raymond. But when you reflect on how many jokes are pointed at the fathers, Raymond, and also Frank, the grandfather in the series, it is concerning, and it continued well beyond that sitcom into other sitcoms that are on today, and it's just unfortunately emasculating men, and this is what we're watching on television. This is what we're watching every single week, on primetime television, if you're a primetime television watcher. And what ends up happening is, men become insecure. Men become, unable to want to lead. And so we need to have this, this type of content that you're placing out there from a very young age for men, for young dads to realize, oh, you know what? Step up, lead your family, lead your wife deeper in faith. And that is so important. So Cathy, thank you, and thank you for the challenge. Certainly, know that I'll be getting your books at CMN because it definitely.
Well, I'm honored and hopefully encouraged and just edified that you're feeling that way. And the other thing I was thinking of as you were talking is dads don't like to have to teach things in a complicated way. Well, what I'm creating through this series is the simplest way for a dad to teach virtue to his kid, because all he's got to do is read the story. And there's even little instructions at the back of the book that's like a mini curriculum in virtue, but it's hidden because the little hero talks to the child saying, you can be a virtue hero too, and tells you little things about it. So we're basically making it simple for dads. Maybe this is, Year of St. Joseph, and the story, this latest story is all about St. Joseph. So we're trying to tee up some good stuff for dads to help them be the kind of dad they want to be, only make it not really super challenging and intimidating to do so. So, but my little call to action is two things. One is I want anybody who's an educator or anybody who knows a DRE or an educator to think about coming to the Momentum 21 event. It's in Chicago, but it's totally worthwhile just for the Catholic Brain track, because that's going to be so beautiful. And getting to know, this is another thing for dads and families who want resources for their family. Catholic Brain is an incredible online platform of faith-affirming resources that kids can sit and play games on this site for hours, and it's all really fun, engaging content that nothing is bad. You don't have to ever worry about, you don't know what they're going to see on that platform. Yeah. No, it's all wonderful. And then I would say that for anybody who is, active in any kind of Catholic ministry, or if you want to make a difference, you're like, it seems like our world is in a dark place and you want to get energized, and you can't go to the youth conferences anymore. This is like the youth conference for grown-ups.
Yeah.
So come to Momentum 21. You can go to catholicmarketing.com to our events page and see all the info. We can share the registration link in some of the little info that goes with the podcast. And then come and visit myvirtueheroes.com if you want to keep abreast of what's going on. I have a whole little page of different free resources. As I come up with various things that are free, we'll be developing little coloring pages, things like that, that go with the stories, but it also gives you access to the storybooks. And if you are recommending them for a school, I'm on a crusade to give parents confidence in recommending these books. So there is a link to a free e-copy of the entire book. No normal publisher ever does this, but you can see the entire book electronically for free on the publisher's site, where you can go and get it. And so that every teacher or educator or principal can see the whole book. There's no surprises. You're not going to get into the third book and suddenly we're going to do some morally misguided thing, just like, Captain Underpants. They made all the kids laugh for 9 books, and then in book 10 they brought out all kinds of crazy stuff, and then the parents are like, no. So no, we will never do that. We will never put in, surprises that you weren't expecting, and we will always have the books available in entirety for people to see so they know what they're getting.
That's awesome.
So CatholicMarketing.com for the event and everything Catholic Marketing Network, and then VirtueHeroes.com for everything that is all about the little Virtue Heroes.
Awesome.
Beautiful. Boy, it's so exciting. It makes me excited to be there with you and Bill and everybody else coming soon. Now, we didn't speak too much about your personal life, but I did want to read a little blurb I have about you, that you're a native of St. Louis, Missouri, revert to the faith after leaving for 5 years, being intensely anti-Catholic, married to your husband for 37 years, 3 wonderful children, and you're longing for heaven, but I am content with, I meaning you, are content with dogs and chocolate as my favorite delights on earth. And that's something that you sent me. So anything about your little bio there, I'd love to hear more. I mean, first of all, congratulations on 37 years of marriage, and that's wonderful. And living in St. Louis now, I know you're moving. Are you staying in the area though?
Yes. We just we're just moving to a different spot in St. Louis. But yeah, and actually there's kind of a funny story about the being married for 37 years, because it's really 37 minus 1. Because during those 5 years where I left the church, I left my husband for 1, because I decided that the best thing that I could do for my children was to love my husband more, and I decided I could love him better separated from him. So we separated the house. This is when our kids were very, very little. And it was, oh my goodness, very difficult, because he did not leave the church. He stayed a Catholic. And so even when we then reunited, God basically gave me my marching orders to go and give our marriage one more try. And so, but then I was very anti-Catholic, and he was still trying to hang on to the Catholic faith. And so it was a very difficult period for him, and he kept praying that I would just come back to the Catholic faith before I died. That was his prayer, and I almost got him to leave, because I was so you can tell I'm a somewhat dramatic person, and I was just on a crusade to get him out of the Catholic Church. It was a horror of Babylon. It was terrible, everything, blah, blah, blah.
Wow.
And but then he went on a Cursillo retreat and stayed up all night talking with someone about the reality of Christ in the Eucharist. And so he came back from that retreat and he says, I can't leave. I just can't leave. And then I wept and cried, and we were going to be united, and I was all upset. And then he got the entire community, Catholic community of Perryville, Missouri, after that retreat, praying for his wife. And then a series of domino events happened that are too much to go into right now. But then I basically went to a class on church history, and it was a 2-week class. And by the end of the first week, I realized I think I made a mistake.
Oh my! What a story! You know what? Oh my gosh.
By the second week, by the end of the second week, I was at a Eucharistic Congress with him. So. Oh
my gosh, I love it. Now I have to mention, I don't know if you know this, but of course, Bill, you were probably thinking the same thing, but the foundation that I represent, the St. Raymond Donatus Foundation, our charism, our tagline is pastoral accompaniment for families in crisis. but the main charism there has been over the last 5 years since our existence is to Catholics who are affected by divorce and separation.
See, I needed you guys.
Yeah. So we're going to have to talk because we also have a podcast for Catholics affected by divorce. So maybe we could chat sometime too about that. And I just want to invite people listening to this too. You want to learn more about that part of what I do. And, of course, we're a team here, Patchwork Heart, Fiat Ministry Network, St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation, is to go to nonatus.org and you can learn about the foundation. But you'd be a great guest.
Awesome. It'd be fun. Yeah, it's too much story for this fun show. So we can
to save it for that one.
Stuff there.
Very good. Very good. So as we're coming to a close with the podcast, Cathy, I wondered, is there anything else that you want to share with our audience?
I just want to share that this year is the year of St. Joseph. And I truly believe the reason why we named our event Embracing Hope with St. Joseph, that we have so much to be hope-filled about, because we know that life is more than just what's right here. And that's what motivates us to have virtue, desire virtue, behave with virtue, because we're not alone. We sometimes feel alone, but we're not. And we don't have to be afraid, no matter what happens. If we feel, if we get sick, if we are well, if we are having a job, if we're not having a job, it's part of our journey. I'm moving into an apartment, okay? I'm moving from the nice 2-story house into an apartment, okay? This is not going to be easy. This is not, and so some people would look at it and be like, oh, no, this is downsizing when I wasn't I wasn't thinking we were ready for downsizing. And so I guess what I'm saying is God has this, and we can be joyful, like Bill was saying, we can be joyful because of our faith, because of our hope. And when we act in charity and with virtue, then that's where the joy hides. If we're feeling discouraged or down or anything, remember the joy hides in those 3 things. And we'll find it, and we'll be so surprised when we do. And it's the joy that lasts. It's not pleasure, which comes and goes. It's the joy that lasts. So come hang out with more people like the 3 of us at Momentum, and you will feel this as well.
Yeah.
Oh, amen. Amen. Thank you so much. Please do come back again to Sowing Hope. And we're going to hang out at the conference. So
absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, folks, please head over to CatholicMarketing.com. It's that simple. And it's VirtueHeroes.com, right, Cathy? VirtueHeroes.com, CatholicMarketing.com. And as Cathy said, come hang out with us. I know that our booth number is 342 at Patchwork Heart Ministry. So stop by booth 342 and you'll find Ann and myself. And, you're just going to be able to encounter a wonderful time with wonderful Catholics. And can't wait. Just can't wait. Know that we're going to be doing radio shows and podcasts, in our booth, and just having a lot of fun. As Cathy said, this is going to be fun. So many of us are craving getting together after the pandemic too, right? Like we're all just craving to get together after the pandemic, and we're tired of looking at each other on Zoom. So if you're tired of Zoom calls, stop by booth 342 and join us for fellowship, and just also learning more about the Catholic Church and more about the faith and different ministries, and how we can help you in all the different facets between Fiat Ministry Network, Patchwork Heart Ministry, St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation. And any last comments, any last words that you might have tonight?
Oh, Bill, thank you. Can't think of anything in particular, but I also want to ask people to encourage them to check out the new book through Patchwork Heart Ministry. Authors are Bill Snyder, myself, Maggie Riggins, and also Jen Sotherton. And that book is available at patchworkheart.org, and it's called Hearts Burning Within Us. Bill, maybe you could tell us a little bit more.
Yes, it is available now. We have the shipment of the first books well in time for Catholic Marketing Network, but if you want to order your copy, you can head over to our website and get the book there, or at CMN, where we'll kind of be doing the official launch of the book. But we're super excited that we have them, the hard copies in our possession, and we can certainly mail them out to you. So so excited that book finally came to fruition, and just super excited about the big launch at CMN.
What's the book about?
What we did,
just a little synopsis.
Yeah, sure, Kathy. So what we did was last year we met with 6 different college students, and we asked them the questions that burned on their heart about the Catholic faith. And we spent the summer 3 months with the 4 authors and ourselves on Zoom each and every week, and we went back and forth about these different questions that they had on their hearts. And they were deep questions. They're not just superficial things, but in the vein of kind of like, Did Adam and Eve Have Belly Buttons by Matt Pinto. We kind of put together this question and answer book. It's 42 questions, and they range from questions about the magisterium to sexual ethics to morality to all kinds of things. I mean, there's even a question about smoking marijuana. Is that okay as a Catholic? And so there are wonderful, just really down-to-earth questions, and I think real-world responses that can be lived. So if you've got a kid that has recently graduated high school and is getting ready to go off to college, in the fall, now is a perfect time to kind of get a copy of this book and give it to them before they go off to school. But it's not a catechism. We wrote this with personal experience, and we wrote this with a lot of intention to keep some humor in there, as and virtue is fun. Virtue is uplifting. So we did a lot intentionally to keep that, but also the truth of the faith and the virtue that you find in it. So super excited about it, and can't wait to launch it at CMN.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it is. Well,
that's what CMN tends to be. We are sort of an incubator for new ideas in the Catholic space. So that's fun that we get to share that moment with you.
Yeah, it is. It's so much fun. And folks, this is all the time we have for this episode. I'm sure we could talk for another 3 hours about all this amazing stuff. But this is all the time that we do have for tonight. So we do encourage you to come back on Thursday as we continue to have another great episode then. But until then, we thank you all for tuning in. And from all of us at the St. Raymond Nonatus Foundation, Fiat Ministry Network, and Patchwork Heart Ministry, I'm Bill Snyder. Keep beating to your Catholic heart, sowing hope into broken hearts, and we will be back on Thursday.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Sowing Hope on Patchwork Heart Radio. For more information about this podcast and our ministries, visit our websites, patchworkheart.org and andesantis.com. You can also follow and interact with us on Twitter at PWH Ministry or Andy Santis 2.